But for Google, the scariest moment is the interface is disrupted, where people don't have to actually interact with links in the way they do today. And that's something that Larry cannot just go and change immediately because he is running a public company that has billions of dollars in market cap and constantly answerable to Wall Street expectations. And Wall Street just wants them to increase that advertising revenue, right? But this is disruptive to that. So hence why an opportunity exists for a new startup like ours.
All right, guys, bang, bang. I thought a great place to start this conversation would be on Twitter. You shared this clip of Larry Page talking about the dream search engine and kind of what he hoped Google would become. When you listen to his description, it sounds like he's describing Perplexity much more than he's describing what Google has become. Talk a little bit about maybe the evolution of these search engines and why is Perplexity able to build something that's much more closer to even the founders of Google's vision for the perfect search engine?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm a big fan of Larry Page, and most people you would talk to about Larry would always just say the guy was living in the future, like he's always imagining the future many years before it happens. And why this moment has arrived much later than he envisioned is because, um, first of all, his vision was the ultimate version of Google is artificial intelligence. Uh, and if you have an AI, it would exactly understand what you're asking and just directly give you the answer to it instead of you having to open links. That's basically the video that I shared. And so why is it that he couldn't do it and we are doing it? I think it's not due to lack of technology that he couldn't do it. Obviously, he's no longer running the company, and Google has a big business model to protect today, which is based on how many people view link and how many people click on a link. They basically optimize their front end so much that the entire company's destiny relies on that 10 blue link user interface. It's one of those rare things where most trillion-dollar companies have divested their bets a lot. Like for example, Microsoft, if there is a new LinkedIn competitor, it's not a big deal. They have a lot of money from Azure, they have a lot of money from gaming, they have a lot of money from operating systems and Windows. Similarly to Apple, you can maybe argue iPhone is the most important thing, but the whole end-to-end packaging of the ecosystem is so strong that it's very hard for anyone to imagine taking them over. But for Google, the scariest moment is the interface is disrupted, where people don't have to actually interact with links in the way they do today. Because and that's something that Larry cannot just go and change immediately because he is running a public company that has billions of dollars in market cap and constantly answerable to Wall Street expectations. And Wall Street just wants them to increase that advertising revenue, right? But this is disruptive to that. So hence why an opportunity exists for a new startup like ours, which can go back to the whiteboard, empty whiteboard, think from scratch, versus having a lot of whiteboards with lots of equations and trying to see which variable to change to adjust. That's Google, and that's like a classic innovator dilemma there, and we are benefiting from that.
Now, one of the things inside of your interface that I think a lot of people immediately notice is I ask a question, I get the answer. I don't get links, I get the answer. But there's also citations, and I can kind of go to the original source. I can go deeper into that answer if I would like to. Talk about maybe the philosophy as to why to present, even when though you can give the answer, to still give the source material and the links for allowing that exploration into these answers.
Yeah, so our philosophy has always been give the power to the user as much as possible. Now, have an opinion about the product. Don't try to do something like you put a summary at the top and you have the 10 blue links at the bottom, and I give you both. That's sort of like the Google UI today. Um, have a clear opinion that, hey, links shouldn't be a prominent part of the real estate of the product anymore. It should be answers and it should be conversations. It should be ability to dig deeper and ask follow ups, but make sure the user can still go and find out the truth if they want to, in case you got it wrong. Because these AIs are still not accurate enough for you to just blindly believe what they say. They still make mistakes. Like maybe 80 to 90% of the answer is accurate, but maybe there's one sentence there that's inaccurate. So even if the user believes something is like not likely to be true, then they can still go and check the source and read for themselves until AIs get to a point where they're like super accurate, right? I always believe like there's an idealistic way of thinking about things, which is like the ultimate version of AI will not even require you to type in stuff. You'll just exactly know what you want in your head, and like you don't even have to ask. That's all in the future. But and part of product engineering is to give some elements of the future today with hacks, right? 10 buildings was a hack to get you to the answer. Now, answers with sources and citations is another hack. Now, 5 years from now, maybe you're like, you know what? I hardly see myself clicking the source. Like it's dramatically dropped. I'm just reading your answer. Your AI is like 1 in 1,000 times inaccurate. I don't care, right? And then at that point, you're just going to talk to it like a human. You don't even have to type. You can just have an AirPods and you can just walk around and ask questions, right? So I believe like this is the right interface today to make a paradigm shift, and that's why we went for it. And also, another reason we did it is like I come from an academic background. Another of my co-founder also comes from an academic background. And the first thing you're taught in academia when you're writing a research paper is like always never write anything in a paper that you cannot actually attribute a source from a peer-reviewed article. And we took that philosophy. What if an AI chatbot was designed with this rule that everything it says has to come from the web? Fundamental difference from ChatGPT. ChatGPT can say whatever it wants. Perplexity can only say what exists on the web. And it also has to attribute what it says in every single sentence to a particular source it's taking from. And so that's part of like our background that's, flowing into the product too.
Talk to me about the future. You just described walking around with the AirPods on and just asking questions and getting answers.
Yeah.
Is that what you think is kind of the end state of this innovation? Or maybe it's 10, 15, 20 years away, but like, where is this all headed and how far into the future do you see right now?
Um, I would say we can create a really good voice to voice experience in a couple of years. Maybe I'm even overestimating that timeline. But for you to like not even look at a computer or a phone will take a while. Like for example, if an answer is actually detailed, you don't want it to be read out to you, right? Like it's kind of laborious to hear the whole thing. So you want it to be visually rendered, and then the AI has to know exactly when to render things, when to just speak it out. And like that depends on like, it should already know to what extent you're interested in without you having to prompt engineer it. So those are the kind of like truly understanding your intent is going to take a while. The models have to be really smart and also be able to run on device as much as possible to minimize compute overload. So these are all like, engineering details that will take a while to figure out. I believe that if we have glasses, not just AirPods, the visual rendering part will also like kind of be taken care of. We can just project things out and read it for us if we wanted to. And that means like our interaction with computing is obviously going to change to new form factors, glasses, AirPods, and more human-like interactions with how we, interact with fellow humans. And whenever we're still doing work, like let's say we are actually doing work, writing something, creating something, we'll still go back to our computers and like we'll still work on it. But it'll feel more like you want to work rather than you have to work. That's sort of the future I think we are going towards.
Explain that a little bit further in terms of there's a lot of fear, I think, of AI taking jobs and kind of what's
Yeah.
everyone going to do. I usually point back to at one point it was like 98% of people in North America were farmers. Now it's
Yeah.
less than 2%, right?
Yeah.
And so we found other things to do, other work to do. But you're talking about a world where maybe we work because we want to, not because we have to. How
Yeah.
do we get there and what is that world like?
So I think today there's a lot of jobs that just require you to manually do a lot of things. Um, for example, there are still jobs, you won't believe this, but there are still jobs that just take physical records of people's application forms and trying to digitize that. There are still jobs that try to like edit any mistakes in someone else's article. There are still jobs that like do brute force stitching together pipes of different APIs because someone else doesn't want to do those integrations, translating code from one language to another because a company's moving frameworks. These are all like super boring, but the only way to solve them today is like dump it on an agency that'll hire a bunch of people and then they'll do this for you and give it back to you. Now, we're not going to enter a world where that agency is fully deprecated. But if that agency had 100 people, now instead it can actually have 5 to 10 people and have 80% of the work done by an AI. So does that mean 90 people are losing their jobs? Yes. The 10 people will be retained, and these are the 10 who are actually really good at it. Like they can quickly look at the mistakes and identify mistakes and point out. So that naturally leads to the conclusion that those who are going to retain their jobs are those who embrace AIs, have a knack of where they go wrong and right, keep up to the latest, up to date speed, whatever the latest cutting edge AIs are, and have really good judgment. Human judgment is going to be more valuable than human labor and creation. Like it's a little bit hard to internalize this because we are always of the opinion that we are the most creative people on the planet. But we it's sort of what Rick Rubin says. You need to have incredibly good judgment, and the actual process of creation, like knowing which tools to use, like which instruments to use, like which software to use, all that is going to be like not super valuable anymore. It's more like, can you look at the end output and say like what's actually going wrong there, and then give that as feedback to an AI or a computer that you're interacting with, and make good use of it to be able to get the same end output much faster than was possible before. And people are going to employ you. Probably they're going to pay you even more than what you got paid earlier. But people are going to employ fewer people, and that's going to take a while for the population to internalize, but that's guaranteed to happen.
Talk about the constraints to getting there. Obviously, hardware is a constraint. Some of the sophistication and accuracy of these models is a constraint. But maybe we can start with the hardware first. There's really two sides to the hardware. There's the consumer interface, which you're talking about, whether it's glasses or other types of devices, but also these models run on hardware, right? And we've seen NVIDIA and many of these other companies that are even tangentially related to hardware do very well in terms of investor returns. So how do you see the constraints on that hardware side in terms of where these LLMs and software is running? And then on the consumer side, it sounds like there's a couple of years away still.
This episode is brought to you by Bet Online. Do you like making a profit from sports betting? Well, set yourself up to take home the most profit possible using crypto to fund your sports betting, casino, and poker account at betonline.ag. You can avoid costly transaction fees, get your payouts lightning fast, and do it all securely and anonymously with the highest deposit and withdrawal limits in the industry. If you want to get in on the action, do it the smart way with crypto at betonline.ag. Head to the website, sign up with promo code POMP100 to get a 100% bonus on your crypto deposit today. If you go and you deposit, they'll give you 100% bonus if you use promo code POMP100. Bet Online, go where the game starts. BetOnline.ag, go check them out today.
Yeah, so let's talk about the work part. AI is replacing humans at work. For that, you actually don't need consumer hardware to run these models. Except maybe in factory inspection or something like that, where you have to wear a glass and you have to identify defective items or something of that nature, where something on device can help you do the computer vision much faster and better than a human eye can. Like those are exceptional outcomes, but majority of digital work, you don't actually need the large language models or like generative models to be running on your consumer device. It can run on the cloud and it's still fine. So what are the constraints that are left? I believe that GPT-4 is already like 60% median human worker today. Just a rough number as why the 60% is like 80% of all tasks times 80% human level. It's like 80 by 100 times 80 by 100 is like approximately 64%. Now that 64% gets up, let's say, to 80% with 4.5 or 5, and all these models are running on the cloud. Then we already are at a moment where like we we would need way fewer humans to do the task, as long as they can work together with the AIs as co-pilots. Now that's going to create new jobs, but it's going to deprecate a lot of existing jobs. So that's for the work part. Now for consumer device hardware, I think the person with the biggest edge here is Apple, because of their custom silicon chips. They no longer rely on Intel or Qualcomm to provide chips for them. They've been working on this even before large language models was a thing, for like for augmented reality and things like that. And they're naturally extremely well positioned to run on-device large language models on Apple phones or MacBooks. And we're going to have these assistants that control the operating systems natively. And we're going to first time have a new kind of computing experience on personal computers, where that could be something like instead of opening a computer and seeing a desktop screen, you would probably see like a search bar where like tell me what to do, and those kind of experiences are going to be possible for the first time. It's gonna take its own gradual progress, where they're going to start something like Apple Watch 1 to 7 or Ultra that we have today is like totally different beasts, right? But that's going to take its own progression. And you're also going to see a lot of computing on the go. Like for example, you're wearing a glass. Like this is for my eyesight, but in general, you can see a lot more people wearing glasses for as a thought partner. While you're walking, you want to know if you want to buy something or not, or like if something is healthy for you to eat in a restaurant, or it could be even something that you don't have to actually ask. Like when you're like in a restaurant and you're trying to eat something, and you clearly know the AI knows it's unhealthy for you, and you've been eating unhealthy for the last few days. It's going to come and warn you, like, hey, like you're not supposed to eat this. Like you've been eating unhealthy for the last like 1 week. This is not good. This is the effect it's going to have. And then all these sort of like surreal experiences are going to be possible.
When you think about this hardware kind of revolution, if you will, that starts to occur, is it going to be custom built hardware, or will we still have a lot of general purpose built? And what I start to think about is the more custom, the harder it is to get into a lot of these devices. Like obviously we see Humane, we see Tab, there's all these kind of consumer hardware that people are trying. And so what I'm wondering is like, do we have to go through a whole life cycle of product iteration, right? Do we have to go make custom hardware that's large, that can run the models, et cetera? And then we have to start shrinking it and basically go right back through what the phone, for example, just went through for 20, 30 years and try to compress it in the shortest period possible?
I think we'll see a lot of custom hardware, yes. Because these models don't need, they're all like standardizing to this one kind of computing. Matrix multiplies done really fast, efficiently, dealing with the key value caching of the memory, and so on. So I think we'll see a lot of people trying to squeeze as much juice out of it for inference on the device without consuming a lot of power. And I can definitely see a lot of people like trying to take on NVIDIA on the inference side, not on the training side. Because the inference side, so there'll be some people who are going to work at the chip layer. There are going to be people who work on top of that, like how to combine it together to put together an end-to-end consumer hardware device. And I can see some more players in this ecosystem outside of NVIDIA too. And of course, Apple's going to keep everything locked end-to-end, that nobody even finds out what they're doing. That's their style. So it'll be very interesting to see different players, but I can see NVIDIA and some competitors helping others to build their own devices here too.
When you look across the landscape, you're very unique in that you worked, I think, at OpenAI, at Google, and at DeepMind, and now you're building Perplexity. There are very few people who have the diversity of experiences on the cutting edge of this technology. What is something that you learned at each one of those organizations that helped you now go and launch Perplexity?
I would say at DeepMind, I learned the importance of having one or two major strike efforts or moonshots that the whole company is like rallying behind to do things, and also the importance of good top-down leadership. It's one of their big strengths. In fact, why they perform better than Google Brain is very good top-down leadership, and hiring really good people. Of course, they made a few mistakes too, which I also learned what not to do there. But the good part is like how well they led and executed. And at OpenAI, I just learned the importance of being relentless. Like they're just relentless. They just never stop. And the mentality is just like keep going, keep pushing, and taking a more long-term view on things. Like not overreacting to short-term failures. If the this whole Peter Thiel thing, if there is a secret that that's working, and the rest of the world doesn't believe in it, it's actually a good thing. So you keep going. They were very good at cultivating that because GPT-1, GPT-2 was all ridiculed at, and people didn't really think it was a real thing. People thought it was a toy. OpenAI was hyping it up, but OpenAI was internally looking at the metrics and evals and like, wait, this really looks like a new kind of computing. Like when have you ever seen before that AIs can learn just from few instructions and learn to do tasks? Even if it's not reliable today, it's going to get reliable more with scale. And that raw belief in data and computing power was kind of like obvious now in hindsight, but at that time it was a secret only they believed in and the rest of the world did not believe in. Peter has obviously said this before, but when it happens in real life in a field that you relate to, you kind of internalize it even more.
When you think of those secrets, what are the secrets that you guys believe you know?
Well, what we know is the importance of working on this. A lot of people might think, okay, this is like one narrow kind of experience of AI chatbots. When I think of AIs, I think of what it can do for me, not like coming and searching for things. Or like when I think of AIs, I think of agents. I don't care about chatbots. Like everybody has these opinions, but one thing we really know is whatever AI you build, it needs to be grounded in facts about the world, or else it's not going to be very trustworthy. And in order to do that, you actually need to build a great index of the web that's particularly suited for day-to-day question answering. And that's a problem that nobody's really focused on. And we also know that the only way of making progress on that is to actually go build a product, get users, and then work backwards in terms of how we can establish the flywheel and continue to make the index better and better. So a lot of people will write us off today saying we can never do this. Google will always be able to do it better than us. But the thing they don't realize is every single day we are making progress. Like the product 3 months from now is going to be way better than what it is today. And today it's way better than what it was 6 months ago. And they're underestimating that steep curve of like improvement that we're going through.
One person who I guess does believe that maybe you got a shot is Jeff Bezos. A lot of people probably don't know that Bezos was an angel investor in Google, 25, 27 years ago, whatever it was. He also invested in the latest round of Perplexity. How did that come about? And then what is the significance of somebody who obviously saw Google, made the bet, was right, now saying, look, there's time and opportunity for the next, search engine really to become popular?
Yeah, so we got connected to Bezos Expeditions Fund. That's the vehicle through which he's investing in companies, and I believe he's also like looking at other AI startups. So Perplexity, we presented a in the Bezos style. We wrote like a small document for their for them to help write a memo on us, and also we gave them a presentation, and they were pretty impressed, and he approved it through the investment. We did not. I did not directly pitch to Jeff, but he did see through all the material and approved it at the end.
That's very cool. And how do you think about, in terms of them looking at Google and obviously having, belief there and now looking at Perplexity?
Well, I'm pretty sure that they're all aware that search is going to change to answers using AI. And this is like a unique moment in time where AI is definitely going to make life easier for people to consume information on the web. And there's constantly going to be ever increasing amount of information that such a tool to exist is actually essential. And our mission of making the planet smarter is also like something that appeals to them likely. So that's my hunch on why they believe in us. And whether Google succeeds at this or not, it's good for the world if Perplexity succeeds. That's how I see it. I'm not saying Perplexity's success is can we dethrone and kill Google. I don't want any company to be dethroned or killed. Like it's not a good thing for anyone. But I think it's good for the world that in the AI native world of search, In the AI chatbot market, for search, generic chatbots, entertainment, Google shouldn't have monopoly there, just like how it had monopoly in the traditional search market. That's what we want to ensure. And we want to be one of the players to making sure it's a competitive landscape there.
So I'm going to read to you part of an answer that you gave in a Barron's interview. It's a little technical for some of the audience, but I thought it'd be really interesting for you to describe it. You said the real solution is to combine the traditional search index with large language models through a paradigm called retrieval augmented generation. That's what we built. We call it an answer engine. Can you explain what a retrieval augmented generation is and then why you believe it's this answer engine?
Yeah, absolutely. So retrieval augmented generation means you retrieve facts from the internet relevant to what query the user asks first. You feed that as context to these large language models, which you can consider as amazing reasoning engines. And these models look at that context and your query together and then synthesize an answer with citations. That's what we do. Now, that whole process, the chatbot part of the reasoning engine and the pulling the facts part of a retrieval engine combined together creates this new engine called the answer engine. That's what you're interacting with on the front end of Perplexity. It's called retrieval augmented because you're always making sure you retrieve and then you generate. So every time you ask a query, we always look at the web for that. Maybe it's not the optimal thing to do when you're asking, give me some names for my baby boy or something like that, right? But maybe that's also like the trade-off we are making with the product. In order to get as much accuracy as possible for almost any question, we are giving up on the creativity and entertainment part of the product. And that's this new paradigm.
Now, when you look at the way people are using the product, what trends are you seeing there? Is it just, hey, I used to go and ask the question to Google and now I'm asking it to Perplexity? I see a lot of people tweeting saying I use it 5, 10, 15, 20 times a day. People are saying I can't live my life without it, right? I mean, these are very bold, powerful kind of user testimonials. So what are they actually doing with the product?
They can use it for anything. For example, a lot of people use it for work. Like they look up the people they're trying to meet before then first time in a meeting. I use it a lot during our fundraising, honestly, because I really wanted to know what were the typical valuations, what were the typical consumer metrics that other past legendary consumer companies achieved at various stages of their funding cycle. How many monthly active users did they have? What does retention even mean? I mean, the story behind Perplexity itself, I've said this before, is like we did not seek to go build a search engine. We built this as a tool that we can ask questions ourselves for. And we realized it needed to have web search grounding or else it would hallucinate. And then we had this amazing tool and like we gave it access to other people. And they all said, okay, this is like not just a useful tool, it actually seems like an alternative to Google. So that's when we realized we had built something much more useful than what we thought. And we put it out to the rest of the world. Now, people can still use Google for like Google Maps, weather, flights, shopping. We have not yet expanded our product surface area to cover all of that. So you cannot just completely deprecate Google today. But there are just certain questions that instead of doing 3 or 4 searches and opening tabs, you can just come to us and ask questions. And you get the answer in an instant versus you get answers after like 15, 20 minutes on Google.
Every founder, when they look at their product, they see like an ugly baby, right? They're like, I love this thing, but there's things I want to change. There's things that, I just can't get over the frustration of. What are those things for you?
I can say, first of all, it's not always having all the information up to date. Sometimes you just see the search results do not have enough information about something because the index is not refreshed or up to date yet. So making an even better index is obvious low-hanging fruit for us. Mathematical expressions, like I do a lot of math on the Chrome search bar. Different people have different habits, but this is my thing. Some people use command spacebar on Mac and they just do it on the Mac Spotlight. So I don't do that. And then we are like slower than Google's calculator, time and weather in certain locations. I follow live sports, and I like to look at the live scores. We don't cover that today. Shopping, we don't have all the catalogs in the world on our index. So these are just like so easy things that might seem to the user it's like easy, but for us it's actually like prioritization, and how to roll this out into one single product. Because our product is still like retrieve and then summarize with an LLM, but many of these use cases don't need LLMs. It needs like accurate access to data sources. But then packaging it all together in one product takes time. And I hope that over the next few months, we can like slowly address all these surface areas and make Perplexity a product where you don't actually have to leave Perplexity to go to Google. You can just stay here. So that's when I think the baby will mature into like a nice looking 3 or 4 year old kid.
Now, hallucinations seem to be more and more of an issue. You're talking here about a little bit of data accuracy. What can you do to help people who maybe are new to using some of these products and don't know that hallucinations can be a problem? We've seen lawyers, use this in like legal briefs and all these stories that have come out now. How do you think about that user experience where it provides the answers so authoritatively, but also the user needs to make sure that it's accurate?
Yeah, so that's actually why we put out the sources at the top, and we also give the sources for every sentence. And we want to get the accuracy of what sources we put at the end of each sentence also like as accurate and precise as possible, so that we don't link the wrong web page for the wrong attribution. And then we can go a step further and say like which part of the answer we are not very confident about, and highlight that to the end user. But we also present other options, like in case you want to rewrite the answer with our Copilot, which is like even more thorough researcher. Think about it as research mode, deeper work, larger model. It's going to get many of the inaccuracies sorted out there. So a larger or better model and a way of like doing the whole answering with parsing web pages on the fly instead of using your index can address like 90% of the hallucinations already are sorted out there. Now the remaining 10% is still going to happen where it's still going to say something that's not very accurate. And I think there are two ways to address that. One is like short term, try to give some measure of confidence in your answer to the user. And long term, actually just try to like address a long tail through AI and machine learning. And I believe that with sufficient scale of usage and data flywheels, we can do the long-term thing pretty well. That's the core bet in the company.
The last thing I want to talk about is Twitter or X. You have a sneaky good Twitter account. I don't think that it is very planned. It seems like you kind of just share the things that you want to say as they come up. If I'm wrong, correct me. But talk about Twitter and maybe what you guys have used it for, both positive and maybe there's negatives as well.
I like Twitter. I mean, I'm very grateful also to Twitter because I remember when I was drafting the first tweets from the company account on the day we created the account to announce our product, and I was like, man, I'm gonna look like a joker. Everyone's gonna make fun of me here, and they'll be like, oh, why the hell did this guy leave his job and do this thing? He could have been writing papers, and now look, he's making a fool of himself. 10 people are going to like the tweet, and it's going to look ugly. That was the honest fear I had when I was drafting those tweets and clicking the send button. But we've benefited a lot from Twitter, like organic growth. A lot of users discover us. A lot of potential employees have seen us on Twitter. So it's really helped us a lot. Like in a world where, I mean, the core word is called distribution, right? You want to distribute your brand, your product as much as possible. You need to have channels for that. And for us, Twitter has been an incredibly good channel. Obviously, my personal account is like more raw and unfiltered than the company account. And some of the things I'm not very proud of what I said. Some of the things I kind of like, played along with the crowd. Definitely like, how, I mean, you obviously the master of this whole game was Elon Musk. He created a whole fan club for Tesla and SpaceX through Twitter, and now he's like enjoying the benefits of it so much. He loves it so much that he basically ended up buying the product, right? So I like Twitter. I think it's a cool platform. There's like negativity, so a lot of toxicity there. I get a lot of comments saying like, "How dare you think you're better than Google? How dare you compete with them? You're gonna die. You're just a rapper." Perplexity is gonna be dead in a year. Like I get that pretty much every day, and like I think all that is keeps me in check too. So it's fine.
Yeah. Well, if you use it for positive motivation, then maybe it's a good thing. It's a necessity.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, like they're not wrong. Like in a rational world, like we could definitely very much still be defeated, and I should be aware of that all the time. But I mean, again, like entrepreneurial journeys are meant for like those kind of pursuits where rest of the world thinks you're going to die, right? Because if your success is low odds, that's when the success is going to be very high magnitude.
I think that's a great place for us to end. Arvind, where can we send people to find you on Twitter or find out more about Perplexity?
Yeah, it's Perplexity_AI is our company account, and Aravind Srinivas is my personal account.
Awesome. And then the website?
Perplexity.ai.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for doing this. I learned a lot today. I think everyone else did. We'll definitely do it again in the future.
Thank you, Anthony.